Hello students, in the previous session we had discussed about the chapter called as life processes. Just will recall what is the meaning of life processes and why they are necessary for our life. Life processes are the processes which are very important for maintenance of our life, to sustain our life. We had seen there are 4 life processes. One is nutrition, respiration, transportation and excretion. In nutrition we had seen the different types of nutrition, modes of nutrition, that is autotrophic, heterotrophic, etc. with examples. And we had seen the process called photosynthesis. Next we also discussed about respiration. What is respiration? Respiration is a process where before that we had discussed about the digestive system in humans, right? Digestive system, it consists of alimentary canal and the glands associated with digestive system. And after digestive system we had discussed about respiration, about cellular respiration where ATP is released and the food we take, that is converted into energy, and that energy is supplied to cells in our body. That is called as respiration, breakdown of food, and that food is energy is converted and that is transferred to the cells of human body. That is the respiration. There is breakdown of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, that is broken down into a 3-carbon molecule called as pyruvate. We already discussed that. And that process takes place in the cytoplasm. And there are 2 types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic, depending on the presence or absence of oxygen. And in lack of oxygen, for example in muscle cells, we had seen the deposition of lactic acid, due to which there is muscle cramps in the body. Now we come to respiration in human beings. As you know, we are complex organisms, right? All organism, whether you take a small microorganism, for example bacteria, to a large organism called as whale, all organisms undergo a respiration process. All organisms undergo a physiological process called as respiration. Respiration is a very important physiological function taking place in all organisms. Different organisms, if we take invertebrates. The meaning of invertebrates. The organisms without backbone are called as invertebrates. They do not have backbone. The animals with notochord or backbone are called vertebrates. So in lower organisms, in invertebrates, how do they respire? For example, insects, they have book lungs. In fishes, they have gills. Then they have different respiratory organs like spiracles, etc. In vertebrates, if you come to vertebrates, fishes have gills, reptiles have gills, lungs, respiratory organs like lungs. So higher organisms have respiratory organs called as lungs. So lungs are the primary respiratory organs. And if you come to humans, as you know, we are most complex organism. We have well developed respiratory system. The respiratory system consists of the following organs or the parts. Number 1, nostrils, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles and alveoli. Alveoli are also called as air sacs. Now we see all the parts in detail. So this is the diagram of respiratory system of man or human beings. Here no need of drawing all the digestive system, etc. different parts of digestive system. We'll directly start with larynx, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, alveoli and diaphragm. These are the main organs taking part in the respiratory system. Now every organism we breathe, right? We breathe in oxygen. We take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. That is called inhalation. Inhalation of oxygen, atmospheric oxygen, and we exhale carbon dioxide. So this process is continuously going on in our body, inhalation and exhalation. Now how the air enters our body? Because you know some amount of air enters through our mouth also. We have discussed this in digestive system. But the maximum amount of air we breathe through our nose. Air enters our body through these nostrils, two openings called as nostrils. Then here there is nasal passage, nostrils. Then it reaches the nasal passage. The nostrils, when we breathe in, there are some hair-like structures, small hairs, which makes the air moist, and the secretion of mucus gland also makes the air moist. Those hairs help us to trap dust particles, because in air there are some dust particles also which enter our nasal chamber or nasal cavity. So it protects air from dust particles and keeps the air moist. It is moist due to the presence of mucus, the secretion of mucus in the nasal passage, by which our air is kept moist. Until it reaches the nasal chamber, our air has become a little warm. Warm air enters the nasal passage. From there it comes to the larynx. This is also called as voice box. It is also called as voice box. Then the straight tube, can you see? There is a long tube-like structure called as trachea. Very important function, trachea. There is also passage of air taking place, but there are no muscles there. So this trachea is protected by C-shaped cartilaginous rings. This trachea is protected by these lines. Can you see? These are cartilaginous rings by which our trachea is protected, or it protects the trachea from collapsing. They actually hyaline cartilage. If you go to higher classes, we study about bones and cartilages. These tracheal rings are made up of cartilage. It protects our trachea from collapsing. And one thing you remember, these rings are not complete rings. They are incomplete. In the front they are complete, but behind they are incomplete. So they are C-shaped rings like this, incomplete, which are protecting our trachea. Next, coming to, from this trachea there is partition. Can you see here? This opens into, this is called as bronchus. What it is called? Bronchus. There is division, and each bronchus enters into the lung. One to this lung, other to this lung. They are dividing. This is called bronchus. Again, this bronchus further divides into bronchioles. As you can see, branches here. There is primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and further last one is the alveoli. So bronchus, it divides here. At this end it divides and enter into each lungs, and they further again they go on branching, forming primary, secondary, tertiary bronchioles. And at the end of this tertiary bronchioles there are balloon-like structures, or can say they look like grapes. They are called as alveoli or air sacs. What is the function of this alveoli? Alveoli are very thin membrane, thin walled, where exchange of gases takes place. It increases surface area for exchange of gases, and these alveoli are richly supplied with blood vessels. Now we have heard about so many disorders of respiratory system like lung cancer, breathing problem, asthma. That is due to this alveoli gets filled with some chemicals or some substances, due to which a person feels difficulty in breathing. There are the disorders we will see later. So this is bronchus, then comes bronchioles, then this is alveoli. It opens into a bunch of grapes-like structure called as alveoli. Alveoli are the site of exchange of gases in the lungs. And children, one thing you remember, alveoli are called as structural and functional unit of respiratory system. As in brain we have neurons, alveoli are structural and functional unit of respiratory system. Structural and functional unit of, can say, lungs or respiratory system. Next, as you can see here, our lungs are double membraned structures, right? Double membrane. The membrane covering the lungs is called pleura. That you will study in your higher classes in PUC level. But you should remember, you should know that. What is pleura? Pleura is a double membrane structure protecting our lungs. And the two pleural membrane here. Inner visceral pleura and parietal pleura. In between there is parietal fluid which protects our lungs from any mechanical shock or friction, right? So protect our lungs. The membrane protecting the lungs is called pleura. It is the membrane covering the lungs. Now, there comes one more organ here called as diaphragm. Can you see this dome shaped structure called as diaphragm? What is the role of diaphragm in respiratory system? As you know, we inhale, we take in air and give out carbon dioxide, right? Now when we inhale, the diaphragm goes down. When we inhale, the diaphragm goes in this manner, in this shape. And when we exhale, it comes back to this position. So our ribs has intercostal muscles attached to this diaphragm. As you know, our respiratory system is again protected by ribs. Here they have intercostal muscles. The function of diaphragm: when we inhale, diaphragm moves down and the air is inhaled. When we breathe out, the diaphragm goes top, dome shape, and the air is exhaled. So this is diaphragm. The function of diaphragm also helps in breathing. Breathing is exchange of gases, as you already know. So this is about the respiratory system in humans, that is nostrils, pharynx, larynx, also called as voice box. Then comes trachea. Trachea is a long tube-like structure protected by cartilaginous rings which protects the trachea from collapsing. Bronchus. Bronchus is singular, bronchi is plural. There is single bronchus, then it finally branches into primary, secondary, tertiary bronchioles. And at the end, it leads to alveoli. It is the most important part of respiratory system. They are also called as air sacs. And they help in exchange of gases, and they are richly supplied with blood vessels. They are richly supplied with blood vessels where exchange of gases takes place. They have a thin walled membrane made up of epithelial tissue. Then we are seeing the diaphragm, inhalation and exhalation. Now, what about the respiratory system in small organisms? As we had seen in lower organisms, in some microbes there is diffusion. Exchange of gases takes place through their general body surface. But it is not sufficient to transfer the oxygen, required amount of oxygen to the body. So, in humans we have a respiratory pigment. Respiratory pigment called as hemoglobin. You know this, what is hemoglobin, right? It is the red color pigment. It gives red color to our blood. It is present in RBC, red blood corpuscles. It is richly supplied with oxygen. So it is called respiratory pigment. It carries oxygen to all the cells of our body. So we require respiratory pigment for transporting oxygen. Just in our case, if we imagine diffusion, it is not sufficient for our body because all cells of our body require oxygen. So diffusion is not enough here. So we require a pigment called as respiratory pigment called hemoglobin, which transports oxygen to all the cells of our body. In lower organisms we are seeing there is diffusion, exchange of gases through their body surface, but that is not enough for transporting of oxygen. So the question is asked, name the respiratory pigment in humans. The answer is hemoglobin. As you know, hemoglobin is a quaternary protein. It is example for quaternary structure of proteins. It is a protein, quaternary structure of proteins. So this is about the human respiratory system. Students, so in previous section we have discussed about respiration in human beings. respiratory system we had seen, one of the important life process. Another important life process which is very essential for maintaining our life is transportation. Transportation in human beings. As we know, there is transportation of food, blood in the different parts of the body to give us energy. We have already seen that. Now here, transportation of blood. Before going to transportation process, just discuss in brief about blood. You know, blood carries food, oxygen, and also removes the waste substances from our body. That we'll study in detail in the next session about excretory system. Blood. How can you define blood? Blood is a fluid connective tissue. What is blood? Blood is a fluid connective tissue. If you have studied different types of animal tissues, there is muscular tissue, connective tissue, epithelial tissue and connective tissue. So, blood is a fluid connective tissue. What are the composition of blood? Blood mainly consists of plasma. Plasma in the dissolved state, plasma proteins, RBCs, WBCs are the composition of blood. RBC, WBC and platelets. Now, all these substances have to be transported in our body. How it is transported? By different mechanisms are there. So, transportation, how the blood is pushed to all the parts of the body. So, for that mechanism, we require an organ, a pumping organ called as heart. So, heart is a pumping organ. It is continuously functioning in our body. Now, we will discuss the heart in detail. Our heart is muscular organ. It is a muscular organ made up of cardiac muscles. Which muscles? Cardiac muscles. And our heart is about the size of our fist. This is called fist. Every individual heart is of their own fist size, and it is a muscular structure, you can say, made up of cardiac muscles. Cardio means heart, made up of cardiac muscles. It is highly muscular organ or pumping organ. And as you know, in human beings or in man, you can say, we have 4 chambers in the heart. 4 chambers in the heart. We have 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. That is right auricle, right ventricle, left auricle and left ventricle. Right auricle. First one, right auricle is called receiving chamber. As you know, auricles are called receiving chamber. Right auricle receives deoxygenated blood from all the parts of the body. Deoxygenated blood. Which blood? Deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body. It comes to right auricle, and from right auricle it sends to the lungs for purification, and after the purification it passes to ventricles and is supplied to all parts of the body. So, right auricle, there are 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. We have 4 chambers in the heart. Now, what is the importance of chambers? What is the importance of chambers in the heart? It prevents the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Now, you may ask, what is the effects of mixing of blood? There is mixing of blood, again there is the mixing of carbon dioxide, then the person feels difficulty in breathing. That we will see in the disorders later. So, we have 4 chambered heart, 2 auricles and 2 ventricles, and there are 2 parts called as superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava receives deoxygenated blood from the upper parts of the body. Inferior vena cava receives impure blood from the lower parts of the body and sends it to lungs for purification. As we have seen, in the lungs there are alveoli where the gases exchange takes place. So, chambers are very necessary to avoid mixing of impure and pure blood or oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. And our heart is surrounded by a membrane called as pericardium. As in lungs we had seen pleura, our heart also is surrounded by a membrane called as pericardium, which protects our heart from mechanical shocks and friction. Now, there are arteries, veins, capillaries. The largest artery is the aorta. Aorta is the largest artery. Next, coming to the chambers, as we already discussed about 4 chambers. Now, different organisms have different number of chambers. For example, if you see in Pisces, that is fishes, the heart is 2 chambered, only 1 auricle and 1 ventricle. There is some difference because fish is an aquatic organism, aquatic animal, as we discussed earlier. Aquatic organisms also breathe, but they use the dissolved oxygen present in the water, whereas the terrestrial animals, we take the atmospheric oxygen present in the air, and the rate of respiration or breathing is faster in aquatic organisms because they are inhaling dissolved oxygen from the mouth. So, the mechanism of breathing is faster in fishes. So, they have 2 chambered heart, 1 auricle and 1 ventricle. Next, coming to reptiles. Reptiles have 3 chambered heart. So, the number of chambers vary according to their mechanism of the body, their energy requirement of the body. It depends on that. And we humans, as we are complex organisms, we have so many life processes in our body going on. So, for that purpose, we require sufficient oxygen transporting to all parts of the body. For this purpose, we require or we have 4 chambered heart because our blood maintains or regulates the temperature of the body. So many activities are there, like in birds, in mammals. So our oxygen necessary is more compared to other animals. So our heart is 4 chambered, 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. It helps to regulate our body temperature. And different organisms have different chambers, number of chambers in their heart. Fish has 2 chambers, reptiles have 3 chambered, except crocodile. One thing remember, children, reptiles have 3 chambered heart except crocodile. Crocodile has 4 chambered heart. Then coming to mammals. Mammals we have 4 chambered heart, 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. So this is about the heart, the structure of heart, how the blood is transported. Most important thing here is to avoid the mixing of blood. This point is very important. The main purpose of chambers is to avoid mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Then coming to another composition of blood, that is lymph. And blood is red in color due to a respiratory pigment called hemoglobin. We already discussed in respiratory system, right? Hemoglobin is a respiratory pigment which carries oxygen to all cells of our body. There is one more component called as lymph. Lymph is a colorless fluid. Lymph is a colorless fluid which also helps in transportation of substances, and it also gives us immunity. It helps us to fight against diseases. The functions of blood and lymph are more similar. The difference here is it is colorless. Lymph is colorless because here respiratory pigment is absent. Then coming to the blood vessels, there are 3 types of blood vessels: arteries, veins and capillaries. Arteries are thick walled, they are receiving chambers, and ventricles are pumping chambers. Atrium, also called as auricles, they are thick walled, and ventricles are also thick. Atria are thin walled, ventricles are thick walled because they are pumping or transporting the pure blood to all parts of the body. Arteries, veins and capillaries. Capillaries are small tubes arising from the veins which are helping in transportation of blood to all parts of the body. So this is about blood, plasma, composition of blood, transportation of blood, and the functioning of the heart and the mechanism of working of heart. That is the 4 chambers. Which chamber receives what kind of blood, and you have to avoid the mixing of blood by the chambers and different organisms. Here there is comparison of some organisms with the human beings. If you come to fish, there is only 2 chambers in their heart. That depends on the functioning or mechanism of that organism. As I told you, fishes use dissolved oxygen present in the water. Dissolved oxygen they use, but we use oxygen present in the atmosphere. Reptiles have 3 chambered heart except crocodile. Mammals have 4 chambered heart, 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. So this is about the transport in human beings. So transportation means transportation of blood, transportation of substances through blood to all parts of the body. So we have discussed 3 life processes till now: nutrition, respiration and transportation in human beings. So we already discussed about the transport system in human beings, about the blood, components of blood. So blood is a fluid connective tissue. As I already told you, blood is a fluid connective tissue, and blood has red color pigment called as hemoglobin. It transports oxygen to all parts of the body. Next, coming to lymph. As I told you, lymph and the blood functions are similar, but the only difference is lymph is colorless. Lymph is colorless and helps in transportation of substances to our body. Next, coming to platelets. What are these platelets? Sometimes there is injury or cut, right? Then there is loss of blood from our body. Does it flow continuously? There is loss of blood? No. After some times it stops. That is because of these platelets. So platelets helps in coagulation, or it is called clotting of blood. Clotting of blood. There are some thrombins, prothrombins in the platelets which help in coagulation or clotting of blood. And we also discussed about blood vessels, right? Arteries, veins and capillaries. Arteries, they take the blood away from the heart to different parts of the body. And the blood which is coming from the heart is under high pressure. It is under high pressure, so it requires thick walls to control that pressure. So arteries are thick walled, and the veins carry the blood from different parts of the body to the heart. So veins are thin walled compared to arteries, and capillaries are thin and small blood vessels which help in transportation of blood to different parts of the body. Now we will see transportation in plants. Till now we have discussed the different life processes like nutrition, respiration, transportation, etc. in humans. Now what about transportation in plants? What do you mean by transportation? What is the need for transportation? What are the materials to be transported in plants? As we had seen vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. Transportation, the transportation of food, water, minerals, certain important substances which are transported to the plant, which helps in the growth and development of the plant. First point is soil. Soil is the natural and richest source of raw materials for plants. The most important thing, children, here is soil. Soil is the natural and richest source of raw materials for plants. You know, soil contains nitrogen, phosphorus, which are absorbed by plants. As you know, we water the plants, and then that soil contains so many minerals, important nutrients, which is carried through the stem or through vascular tissues to different parts of the plant for their growth and development. But from the distance from root to the leaves or different parts of the plant is a bit longer. It is not a bit shorter distance, it is long distance. So these all nutrients have to travel a long distance. So diffusion alone is not sufficient for this process. So we require some more important parts which are required for transportation. The transportation requires some more things which have to transport the substances to longer distances. So here we are studying about vascular tissues. Vascular means to transport. As we are seeing in human beings, blood is transporting to different parts of the body. Here also, plants also require vascular tissues like xylem and phloem. You know, xylem, it is a water conducting tissue. The different elements of xylem are xylem fibers, xylem parenchyma, tracheids and vessels. Phloem parenchyma. Phloem has 4 elements like phloem fibers, phloem parenchyma, companion cells and sieve tubes, which help to carry food and water respectively to different parts of the plant. Now, when it is transporting, here comes one more term called as transpiration. Children, do you know the meaning of transpiration? The loss of water. The loss of water in the form of droplets or water vapor is called transpiration. It is a very important process in plants taking now and then, transpiration. After all the processes like photosynthesis, etc., there is loss of water. And you know, leaves have numerous pores called as stomata. Stomata are small openings which are present in the lower epidermis of leaves, which help in exchange of gases. They help in exchange of gases and transpiration. Numerous stomata are present in the leaf. So, the loss of water in which form? In water vapor or in the form of droplets. In the form of droplets is called transpiration. What is the importance of transpiration? We will see what is the importance of transpiration now. First point, it regulates temperature. So as you know, there are some long day plants, short day plants. As temperature plays a very important role in complex organisms, temperature plays a very important role in plants also. So transpiration helps to regulate or to control the temperature. Number 2, absorption of water and upward movement of the substances. Upward movement. So from where the nutrients are taken? From the soil. From the soil, the nutrients are transferring to different parts of the plant. That is in which direction? In upward movement. It has to reach the leaves, stem, flowers. So different functions of plants takes place. The transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is translocation. There is both forward, upward and downward direction of transport. But the transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called translocation. As we had seen the meaning of photosynthesis, there was breakdown of glucose. So in the presence of oxygen, it is broken down into carbon dioxide and water. So green plants prepare their food with the help of sunlight, carbon dioxide, and the food is synthesized in the leaves. So the transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called translocation. And the energy from ATP, you know, adenosine triphosphate. Children, this is very important term, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That is the energy currency of the cell. You already studied in your lower classes. Energy currency of the cell, adenosine triphosphate, that is being utilized by plants for translocation, because as the food is manufactured, it has to be transported to all parts of the plant. So where it is manufactured? In the leaves, in the chloroplast of the leaves, the food is manufactured and transported to all parts of the plant. See children, transportation is very important process. It takes place in all organisms. It may be animals, human beings and even plants. But tissues, organs are different for different functions. But the physiological process takes place in all organisms in different ways. So we have discussed about transport in plants. Now we have seen till now nutrition, respiration, transportation, right? Now the one more most important life process we are going to see now the most important life process is excretion. What is that? Excretion. Just will recall, as I told you in the first session, nutrition, respiration, transportation and excretion. These are the four main important life processes for humans to survive, or any organism to survive or to maintain its life. So the processes which are very essential to maintain our life are called life processes. So we had come to the last session, that is the fourth life process, that is excretion. Children, what is excretion? How do you define excretion? So it is the removal of nitrogenous waste from the body. It is a biochemical process where there is removal of nitrogenous waste from the body. Removal of nitrogenous waste from the body is called excretion. Now all organisms perform excretion, right? But the organs are different. As I told you, there are invertebrates, vertebrates. So different organs perform different functions. So there are excretory organs also. But in lower organisms, they excrete through diffusion or general body surface. But what happens in humans? In humans we have excretory system, human excretory system. So excretion is the process of removal of nitrogenous waste from the body. It is very important process because the waste substances are very harmful. Now and then they have to be excreted from the body. They are toxic substances. So we have human excretory system. Now we will see what are the parts of human excretory system, and we will also draw the diagram. Human excretory system, right? So human excretory system consists of, first one, a pair of kidneys. Where are kidneys located? We'll see now. A pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters. Number 3, urinary bladder, and number 4 is urethra. So children, remember, human excretory system mainly consists of 4 main organs: a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, urinary bladder and urethra. These two are in pairs. There are 2, but these are only 1 in number. Now we will draw the diagram of human excretory system. There are bean shaped kidneys, yes. So this is the kidney. This is on my right side, so I will label it as right kidney. This is left kidney. A pair of bean shaped, reddish brown in color kidneys. Then these are ureters, a pair of ureters. Then comes urinary bladder, and then last one urethra. These are the main parts of human excretory system. First we will see in brief kidneys. Kidneys are reddish brown in color, located behind the backbone in the abdominal cavity. Kidneys, reddish brown in color. From each kidney arises a long tube called as ureters. Now, what is the function of kidney? Kidney produces urine. It produces urine which is passed from this tube called as ureters. It is a passage for urine. And urinary bladder. Urinary bladder is an organ where urine is temporarily stored. The urine which is coming from the kidney through ureters is stored in urinary bladder. You should remember, it is temporarily stored in urinary bladder, and whenever there is urge for urination, it is excreted through urethra. So, this is about in brief. Next we will see in detail how the urine is formed. What are the functions of this kidney? So, understood children? Excretory system consists of a pair of kidneys, bean shaped, reddish brown in color, which has numerous structural and functional units called as nephrons, which helps in filtration of blood, and the urine is passed through these tubes called as ureters. This is only for passage, and after that it is stored in urinary bladder. It is temporarily stored here. Temporarily stored in urinary bladder and passed out whenever there is urge through urethra. Now we will see what are the structural and functional unit of kidneys or the excretory system. As we have seen in respiratory system, there are air sacs or alveoli, which are structural and functional unit of lungs or respiratory system. Here also kidneys have structural and functional units called as nephrons. There are 1.5 million nephrons in each kidney. Just imagine, each kidney has 1.5 millions of nephrons. These are microscopic structures present in the kidneys which help to filtrate the urine, or filtration of blood takes place in the nephrons. Now we will see the structure of nephron in detail. So let us draw the structure of the diagram of nephron. It is a very important diagram. Structure of nephron. It is a microscopic structure, highly coiled tube it is. Draw a bit small here. Okay. So this is Bowman's capsule, cup shaped structure called as Bowman's capsule. This is glomerulus. This is PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, and this part is called DCT, distal convoluted tubule, and this part is called collecting duct, and this U-shaped structure is called as Henle's loop. Now, so this is the diagram of nephron. So, as told you, these are microscopic structures present in kidneys. Each kidney has about 1.5 millions of nephron. First, the main parts of this nephron are, first one, Bowman's capsule. It is a cup-shaped structure in which there are a knot of blood vessels, blood capillaries, knot of blood vessels or capillaries in this Bowman's capsule, which helps in the filtration of blood. The urine is filtered here. The main function is filtration of blood. Next, coming to the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal convoluted tubule helps to maintain the pH of the filtrate. Here the filtrate is urine. The urine coming from this Bowman's capsule is filtered by this glomerulus and is passing through PCT. It helps to maintain the pH, regulates the pH of the filtrate. Then from PCT it is going to DCT, distal convoluted tubule. Once again, proximal convoluted tubule and distal convoluted tubule. Now, as you know, the composition of urine mainly consists 99% of water and 1% of amino acids, organic salts, etc. And in DCT there is reabsorption or resorption of water, minerals, amino acids, salts takes place in DCT, distal convoluted tubule. Reabsorption of water and minerals takes place. Then from there it passes through Henle's loop, a U-shaped structure called as Henle's loop. There are two loops here, ascending limb and descending limb. This we will study in your higher classes in detail, Henle's loop. Then from here the urine is passed through the collecting duct. Actually, collecting duct is not a part of nephron, as it joins the another nephron. We cannot call it as a part of nephron, but I would mention here the collecting duct where the urine is coming out of this part of nephron. So, millions of nephrons are there. So, in every nephron, this filtration of blood is taking place, and finally, the urine is passed through the urethra. So, this is about the structure of nephron. Nephrons are structural and functional unit of kidneys. Each kidney has about millions of nephrons. Nephrons help in the filtration of blood in glomerulus, that is in Bowman's capsule, a cup-shaped structure. There are knot of blood vessels here which are filtering the blood. Then from there it goes through PCT, DCT, Henle's loop, and finally the collecting duct where urine is passed through the urethra. So, this is about excretion in human beings, human excretory system, removal of waste from the body. Now, we will see excretion in plants. Do plants excrete? Yes. As animals excrete the waste substances, plants also excrete. What do the plants excrete? There are some raw materials, some substances in plants also. Now you know, plants require carbon dioxide, they utilize carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen during photosynthesis. So oxygen is excretory material of plants, they excrete oxygen in plants. It is also waste for plants, right? But for us it is very important for respiration. But in plants, oxygen is exhaling oxygen and taking in carbon dioxide. So during photosynthesis, plants excrete oxygen. It is a waste product, excretory product. Next, The raw materials like resins, gums are all waste products excreted from the plant or from large trees. So these are the excretory products in plants. So in this chapter we are discussed about the different life processes like nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion. And these 4 life processes are very essential for maintenance of life, whether plant or animal. So this is about life processes. Thank you.